Welcome to the Savvy Luminary podcast, Astrology for Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, creator of the Astrobrand Method, business astrologer, brand designer, author, and Aquarius boss woman. I help visionary spiritual entrepreneurs and impact makers like you illuminate and amplify your unique star powers so you can be the luminary you were born to be. Well, hello, luminaries. I am just beyond thrilled to bring you this podcast guest. We have today joining us the beautiful, brilliant, heart-centered Shirin Eskandani. Hello, Shirin.
Hi, Leslie. I am so thrilled to be here on the podcast. Long time listener. I just love the work that you do so much.
Oh my goodness. The feeling is mutual. We'll talk about your bio and I could read your bio, but the thing about Shirin that I really want you to know is that her business, Wholehearted Coaching, is just completely reflected in her brilliant chart with her Leo sun in the 10th house and her beautiful Libra rising and also her fiery Sagittarius moon. So just all of this beautiful fire and air, but you have this amazing way to not let it catch like a wildfire, but to contain it and ground it so that we can all feel centered in your presence. How do you do that? Let's just dive into the deep end, Shirin. Is that okay with you?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't even know. And you and I worked together. I did the Astrobrand sessions with you, and it was actually really illuminating, for lack of a better word, but to really be like, oh, that's how I strike the balance. It's, my chart really reflects that. And I think for me, my journey into healing and growth was always about, I think, opening my heart. And I think that's what healing is, I think for many years, and I'm sure for many people listening to this, when you don't learn the real tools of actually navigating the world in a really heart-centered way, what you're actually doing is closing your heart, and you're creating these walls around your heart, right? And that's what keeps you safe, and that's what keeps you secure, and that's surviving. And I think many of us should really embrace and be compassionate towards that side, because it gets us very far. But then we all know that survival place actually keeps us from our joy. It keeps us from love and truth. And I always say that when you are dimming one part of your life, dimming one part of your emotions, you're dimming all of them, right? So if there is a wall around your heart, yes, you may not be vulnerable to certain things. You may not be feeling certain pain, but you're also not feeling the full expression of your joy and the full expression of your happiness. And so my healing journey was really about being able to open my heart fully, which meant feeling all the things, but also learning the tools to help me navigate those moments in a really kind and compassionate way, in a way that was healthy. And so that's kind of where Wholehearted Coaching came from. And in our work together, you were like, wow, this is the best name you could have ever thought of. And at the time, it just felt really good. And I'm sure anyone who's listening, and Leslie, I'm sure it was the same for you when you're first creating your business, the name of your business is just one that you flip and flop over for so long. And I remember I was like, is it this? Is it that? And you're like, I have to buy a domain name. Am I ready for this? And but Wholehearted, when I came across it, it just felt so right. And now as the business has grown and we're 5 years into it, I'm like, oh, wow, I really picked a proper name for it, really. So, that's kind of where the name came from and how I embodied it and how I came to it.
Beautiful. So what some of the things that almost kind of just brought tears to my eyes as you're talking about it is these walls that you build around your heart. And I know for me specifically and personally right now, I feel like I'm in this kind of a dip in terms of my heart center. I can even feel it in my posture. I can feel how my shoulders are curving around my heart, and if we don't deal with things, how they just kind of grow and grow and grow. And so I would love to hear how you kind of discovered that idea of your heart being closed off and what that means in from your identity to where you are now. I mean, that's a big ask actually, but I think you understand me.
Yeah. I mean, I'll share a little bit about my story. So my family immigrated from Iran when I was quite young. And like many immigrant kids, like many kids who find themselves not looking or experiencing life like the majority, I think what I ended up doing, as many of us do, right, to survive, is I created these, I call them coping mechanisms, but coping mechanisms that we applaud, right? Like people pleasing and perfectionism, and, you know, just like a heightened sense and ability to know what other people wanted and to be perfect and all of these things. And, you know, they got me very, very far. I actually moved to New York, where I live now, in order to pursue a career in opera.
Yeah.
And it was,
love that.
It's such like, yeah, whenever I say that, people are like, wait, what? An opera singer? So, but it, you know, it was the thing that brought me so much joy in my life. And really, if we're talking about heart being open, like when I was on stage, my heart was like fully open, fully in my element, expressing my like Leo nature, my Sagittarius nature of exploring things and, you know, just going all over the world. It was just really amazing. However, I was doing it from this place of those walls. So the perfectionism, the people pleasing, all of that stuff was ruling how I did things. And so I got to a point where actually I was very quote unquote successful. And I got the call that I'd been waiting for forever, which was my agent called me and he said, you know, Shirin, like the Metropolitan Opera wants you to sing in Carmen next season, right? Like absolute dream come true, Leslie. Like this was my dream opera, my dream opera house, my dream role. And I remember in that moment, you know, I'd imagined this moment so many times as a young girl thinking, you know, I'd get this, if I ever got this job, I'd feel happy and successful and I'd know it was all worth it. And I'd know that I'm good enough and I'm, you know, an amazing singer. And I remember getting off that call and having like that brief moment of like happiness, but then all of it dissipated, went away. And I realized nothing had changed. Like I still felt like I wasn't worthy or enough or successful or happy or joyful. And so that's when I realized, wow, like nothing outside of me is ever going to bring me joy or happiness. All of that actually has to do with what's going on internally. And so it became this process of taking those walls down. And I had about a year and a half from when I got that job offer and when I sang at the Met. And in that year and a half, of course, I worked on my craft, but I mostly worked on what was going on inside. And I started working with a coach and she was able to really help me navigate life in a really healthy way. So I went from surviving to thriving. And I say to this day that my greatest success in life isn't singing at the Met, but it's singing at the Met and enjoying every part of the process, which meant, you know, when things didn't go really amazingly, I wasn't my worst critic. I wouldn't hold on to it. I was just able to be present. You know, I like literally can still remember every curtain call, every bow, every, all the applause. Right. And that's not, I couldn't do that in the past. In the past, I would just take one mistake and it would, you know, shadow over everything else,
obsess,
you know, and
about every little thing.
Yes. Obsess over it and make it part of some story. And it just wasn't, I had gotten to the point where I really was at burnout because of the way I was singing, right? Because I was just so unkind to myself, just comparing and all of that stuff. And then I was able to undo all of that. And it was just such an amazing experience, but it also illuminated to me that perhaps I want something different in life. And that's how I found coaching and all of that. But it came through this process of like letting go of all of these layers of survival, and just really getting to a point where I could be open-hearted and explore things and really enjoy things. I think that's truly the reason why we're all alive, is to enjoy life. I really, really do. And so it was such a gift. And now I get to do that work with others.
Oh my goodness. So it just to reflect back, just kind of that pathway of, you know, growing up and your coping mechanisms as an immigrant child, trying to be perfect, people pleasing, and then finding this this part of this talent and being really good at it and saying, okay, well, this is going to be my identity. And, I think some of my listeners here know that I'm also a classical musician. And so I think for somebody to understand this process of being a professional classical musician, it is like relentless. You spend hours and hours in the practice room perfecting the same phrase that you've been doing for like 10 years, 20 years, and it never being like perfect enough. And then listening to all of your musical coaches and your musical teachers tell you all of these things, and you get so hypercritical, to be able to still stand up on the stage and first of all overcome your fear by having something memorized and like just letting go and like being in the moment. It is like this massive undertaking, and it like, quite frankly, it like F's with your mind.
It totally F's with your mind. It's such a hard thing to do, because also it's one of those, and I think a lot of careers are like this. Actually, I'm not unsure, actually, maybe creative careers where you also really do need other people's opinions on like how things are going. Right. And so I think as humans, we already are always striving for like, did they like that? Were they into that? Was that good? And then on top of that, you have this. So yeah, it just really does screw with your mind a lot.
Yeah. And so, but then just that level of excellence that you have learned to cultivate from, from part of the people pleasing and like your coping mechanisms, but also just like your pure raw talent that with your Libra rising, with all of Scorpio and they're almost, and then your Saturn and your Pluto, it's like you have this ability to create intense disciplined beauty. And no matter how you're going to direct that, whether you're directing it on the stage of the Metropolitan Opera House in New York City, which is like the creme de la creme of United States opera, and not only United States opera, but the world. It's like one of the world's top opera houses. In Carmen, such a beautiful, like I can just see like just such a beautiful role for you. But then say like, you know what? That is not really what's sparking joy for me. Like, this is what I need to work on, this wholeheartedness and like taking down those walls. And I've been teaching a course right now for delivering it to about 30 people. And right now we're working on the moon sign, and we're working on how we really have to look at our moon sign and all those shadows and see what those gifts that you bring to it. But it's like this process, this like evolutionary process that even if you fixed it once, it doesn't mean that it's not going to come back. And I know just like for me personally, what I was talking about in the very beginning, and I'm still kind of weepy eyed just hearing everything. It's just because like I'm facing this again. I'm going, it's time to tear down some walls again.
Yeah, I have a good friend, Aaliyah Lovely, and she always says that healing isn't linear. Healing is like a circle, and we kind of come back to the same things again and again, but armed with different tools and different awareness and, different circumstances. And I think it's just such a great reminder, because as we go through life, we're like, why is this thing here again? Like, I thought I dealt with you. And I love how also like our chart is also supporting that, right? Like this is your moon, these are your shadows. But as hopefully as we grow and we heal, we have other tools and awareness and understanding to go through it differently.
Yes. So now you've kind of retired from opera singing, and now you're like this well-known and celebrated coach and healer. What are you doing right now, and how are you offering it into the world?
Yeah, so I'm really, really excited because I'm launching my first membership in October. And I'm so thrilled about it because I think one of the things for me when I got into the wellness world at the beginning, right? It's so thrilling and exciting because you're just like learning so much, and there's all these different tools, and it's just like you're just connecting the dots. You're like, oh, this is why I do this, and I can use this tool to kind of navigate this. It's so exciting, but it can also be really overwhelming because there's just so much information out there. And also sometimes, especially as an immigrant woman, a lot of the spaces I found myself in initially weren't spaces in which I felt really comfortable or included or really safe. But the information was so great that I would like put myself in these situations in which perhaps were kind of not the best or ideal or slightly harmful. And so over the years, I've been really trying to I've been wanting to create a membership. But I think sometimes with memberships, what's difficult is how do we still maintain that intimacy? And I know that's something in my chart when we work together. You're like, this word intimacy had come up. And I was like, yes, this is what has been like, I've been trying to think of forever, because intimacy is so important to me, because I think that's what cultivates trust and allows you to be vulnerable. And I think communities really operate at their best when you can have that sense of intimacy, right? Yes. And I think community is how we heal, right? So I was like, well, how do I create a membership with all of those things? And I'm really, really excited that I think I figured it out. And that this October, the membership, the Alchemy Collective, which Leslie and her team did the branding for, and it's beyond. I mean, even if you're not even interested in joining us, you need to go to the landing page, because the work that they did on this beautiful, beautiful site is just so incredible. It so aligns with what I wanted to convey in this offer. And so that's what I'm really, really excited about. I also do small group coaching programs for 10 women, but really the work that I do is to empower people to become their own healers and leaders. And because I believe as a coach, I'm like, I want to give you the tools so you can go off into the world and do whatever you want to do. As you said, like the same challenges are going to come up, the same thoughts are going to come up. And I think the sign of a really great coach or a facilitator or a teacher is that you don't have to work with them forever and ever and ever. And you can come back and you can, be in touch with them. But that they've given you those tools to really become your own person, reclaiming that sovereignty in your own life. And I think that's one thing that I sometimes feels lacking in the wellness and healing world, is that we feel like we're supposed to be listening to other people and taking their advice. And yes, the advice is amazing, but then you are the person at the end of the day who gets to decide what is best for you. Right. And I think that that's such an important message, that I feel so strongly about. And I want other people to really understand and claim for themselves.
Oh my goodness. I love that so much. So when we were talking earlier about the Alchemy Collective, and you're sharing some of these pillars and how you're building this to be more inclusive and be like an intimate community, may I ask some of the things that you experienced in the wellness world that maybe you didn't feel safe? Maybe because sometimes I know specifically for me, it's like something is not quite right, but because of my walls, I don't actually understand when that has happened. Like I used to really be into yoga, and when you say these things now, it's like, oh yeah, I do remember when I was like, why did I always feel so weird in my yoga classes? Well, I was the only person of color. I was the only person who was bigger than a size 6. There was all of these different things that I couldn't really understand at that point. So you must have a better understanding of these kinds of things, these walls that we put up.
I mean, honestly, though, that's for me too, because I think, especially those of us who kind of have been in the wellness world for a while, I don't think we questioned at the beginning. I think we just figured that level of discomfort or unease was just supposed to be part of it, or we didn't even acknowledge it, right? I think that's the thing with things like privilege and racism. I think when you're enmeshed in it, you're just like, well, maybe it's just me. I think it's almost easier to think the problem is me than it is this larger systemic issue, right?
The problem is always me.
Which we as humans, I think, I'm actually reading this book right now, Educated. Have you read it, Leslie?
No, I'm gonna write that down.
It's not about the wellness world, but it's this woman who she grew up in a very fundamentalist Mormon home where they were homeschooled anyway. But there's this passage in it that I really was like, whoa, this is really big. And I want to write about it on my Instagram page. But the idea is she was going through kind of a mental breakdown at a certain point. And she was like, it was easier to call myself a procrastinator and lazy than to say that I needed help. Right. And I think that that's something humans do, where it's just it's easier to think that it's me than to say that there's something way bigger going on here that really needs to be addressed. And so really, just like you, it was looking back and saying, whoa, I was in that workshop. And again, it was just a bunch of white, able-bodied, very privileged people on stage talking about certain things, one, using modalities and talking about ideas that are from other cultures and other communities, and not even acknowledging them, right? Not even acknowledging them, not right. The appropriation part of it. Two, there is, I'm not going to name the person, but there is a person who's really big in the world of mindset work. And I remember going to a workshop, and somebody who was a person of color was asking something, and they flipped it towards, and it was obviously something that was about race. It was a racist incident they were talking about. And this person flipped it around and was like, well, how you should change your perception wait Right. And that is something that's like happening in like the mindset world. Right?
Sirens should be going on.
Wait a second. But I didn't feel like I had the power to say anything or talk about it. Right. Yeah. And so certain things like that, as they build up over time, and not addressing trauma, I think that's a big one too. For many of us who come from certain backgrounds, we have either lived trauma or ancestral trauma. And when we talk about healing, a lot of the times the examples that were being used, I was like, this does not relate to me at all. This is not my lived experience in the world. And so it was like having to take the ideas and having to run it through a computer that was my computer.
Yes.
And creating a, a formula that was for me, which is double the work, and I'm already in a very vulnerable place. I'm just trying to heal. I'm trying to figure out why the heck I do the things I do. And you're not naming things like white supremacy and systems of oppression and trauma. That's leaving a huge part of the equation out. Right. And so that for me has been a big part of my platform, is to address those things and to really, this is for everyone. I think wellness is about the collective. It's for the collective. And we do not become well unless we are all involved in that, no matter who we are, what our background is, all of that. Right. And so this is something that has to be kind of addressed and talked about. And so for me too, Leslie, I think when I was going through it, I was like, this is weird. And then a couple years into it, when we really started talking about things like white supremacy and systems of oppression and trauma, I was like, oh, that's what it was. And so as part of the Alchemy Collective is really having those pieces of acknowledgement, and also bringing in other people to teach things. Because as much as, I think I'm awesome. I think I'm pretty great at what I do.
Freaking awesome, Shirin. I concur.
But again, I am not a guru. I am not the be all end all. I am, and so bringing in other facilitators and teachers and practitioners to share their stories, to share their modalities, to share what they think is important. And I think that's something also sometimes within the wellness world that people feel that they need to be the expert in something. And I'm like, you can't be an expert in this because it's so specific and unique to a person, the person on the other side. And I can give ideas and I can give resources and I can give tools. But again, at the end of the day, you choose what's best for you. And so that's what I'm hoping and aiming to do in the Alchemy Collective, is to really bring lots of ideas in there and really, really acknowledging where people are and where they're coming, where they're at in their lives right now. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love the idea of the Alchemy Collective. I love this sense of community. And I love how we're going to really look at and define some of these, those walls that we didn't even know were up there. And instead of just always blaming ourselves and internalizing it, seeing oh, there is a definition for this. There is a name. I just remember when it was I'm so late in the healing game in certain aspects. I recently only found out about the term was it colonial mentality, where, you feel as somebody who's one of the oppressed that your culture isn't as good as somebody else's culture. You really embodied that falsism. And I was like, oh my gosh, there is a name for that. And it was so liberating to have a definition and a term, a terminology for it, and saying, oh, that's my experience.
Yeah. Defining things and naming things. It's just if you're sick, right? Again, getting a definition for what you have, a name for what you have, doesn't heal it, but it empowers you. And it's oh, I can this is the thing, and I can do research on it, and I can do this. And I think it is so empowering, and decolonizing the way that we become well is so incredibly important for all of us. Like, it doesn't matter if you're BIPOC or white. I think all of us need to be in this process of decolonization. And I think it gets me so excited about what, like, the legacy of this work and how other people can then come to these modalities and heal and become well for themselves.
Oh my goodness. I just absolutely love it. So the Alchemy Collective, so inclusive community, you're going to bring in a bunch of practitioners. People are going to be sharing their shared experience and their individual experiences. What else will you have in the Alchemy Collective?
So every month in the collective, we focus on a theme. And so it's the alchemy of worth, the alchemy of joy, the alchemy of our magic. I do lots of work on mindset and mindfulness and manifestation. And so as part of that, we get 3 calls a month. There's a private podcast. There's monthly journal prompts and somatic practices. So I lead meditations, and I do tapping or EFT.
Mm-hmm.
And we also do breath work. So it's really, because for me, something that's also become very clear is that healing is spirit, body, and mind. And so we have to, it's not just neck up, it's 360, right? So bringing in all the different modalities to heal, and also recognizing that there's lots of things within the collective that you can use. And for some people, they'll really love coming to the live calls. And some people are like, no, I just really love doing these meditations and checking in with the community once in a while. So there's something in there for everyone, because I think we all have certain ways we like to, engage in our healing process. And also sometimes in our lives are just more difficult than others. And I think that was a really big part of it. The collective is a year-long membership. And because I think, I'm part of collectives where they're like, yeah, you can opt out at any time. And then at the back of your mind, where you're like, well, I can just like leave. You're not really
Not
part
committed.
of that collective. Yes. You're not part of that collective or that whole. And also you're going to have moments in your life where it's going to be a little bit more difficult to engage in the work. And then I think we make up the story of who we are. Like, oh, I'm beyond help. I can't even do a 10-minute meditation. I can't. And having that 12-month container and being like, okay, but for 12 months, even if something happens in this month, I can't, or for a couple months, I can always come back to this. And I think that's something I always really underscore in my communities, that the people in my communities love, is every time they show up to a call, I'm like, I don't care if you didn't listen to this or you didn't do that. I don't care if you joined us last week or I don't even care. I don't care. I'm just glad you're here right now. And I think we just need to let go of the shame and the guilt when it comes to our wellness, because wellness is supposed to make us feel better. I don't know about you, Leslie, but I have had so many times on my wellness journey where I'm like, oh my God, I'm not journaling enough. I'm not meditating enough. I'm a horrible human. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like letting go of that is, I think, such a huge part of it as well.
Oh my goodness. This sounds like divine. It sounds so wonderful. Before we'll share this again at the end, but if people are interested, where can they find you and more information about the Alchemy Collective?
Yeah, so you can find it on my website at wholehearted-coaching.com/alchemy. And again, even if you're not even interested in it, the web design is so beautiful. You need to go check out Leslie's work. But yes, you can go there. You can also go to my Instagram, Wholehearted Coaching, and you can find the link in my bio there. But on my website, wholehearted-coaching.com/alchemy.
Beautiful. It was such a pleasure to be able to design and direct. And, of course, Jeff does all the execution, and he just weaves everything together. And when we were putting the concept together for the alchemy, I was like, it has to be feels like it's not a work complete yet. Like it's a work in progress. It has to feel a little bit messy. It's, of course, it's not messy. It's like a beautiful site, but it has to feel like really organic and like have like mystery in it. Like what's going on. And so choosing those shapes and those colors, of course, according to your design as well and your existing brand, it was such a fun piece to put together. I can't wait to share it with the world.
Well, one thing I really want to add to this is I've had people do my branding and design before, and it's been great and wonderful. But like the back and forth process was a lot because I was trying to convey to them who I was. And I think a lot of the times as a business owner, even you're not clear on how to convey that. You're just like, well, I'm kind of fun and I'm bold and I'm this and I'm that. And you're like, you're not even explaining it properly. But what really struck me about this experience with you and Jeffrey was that one, I mean, you're such wonderful people to work with. And so just so wonderful what you do. But two, I didn't have to really explain who I was because you had that information from my chart and from our work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, it really was just the most flawless kind of process of saying, this is what I'm creating. This is the name. This is the copy. And there was like literally almost no back and forth. It was just like, you guys presented me with a couple options. And usually I'm like, well, I don't know. I was like, that's it. And that's it right there. It was so incredible, Leslie.
Well, I mean, it does help. So, I mean, we mentioned it earlier. Shirin found me, this is actually a really good story because I hear this quite often. You had some questions about your brand and you're like, Leslie can help me. And we didn't really know each other very well, but you're like, Leslie, how did that work out when you're like, let's go, I need an Astrobrand session from Leslie?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, first of all, you are there's something so aligned with everything you present to the world. So I actually had my eye on working with you for a while because just everything you put in the world resonated with me. And it's just very genuine and honest. It's like, this is what I do. You can work with me or not, but like, I'm very good at what I do. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's an invitation. And I think to me, the businesses that like really, again, wholehearted, they're always an invitation. It never feels like you're trying to force me into it or coerce me, but it was like, this is an invitation. And so I was waiting for the right time to open my invitation. And for the past 6 months, I've been kind of going through a real, like reframe in my business and how I do my business. And I was going at it through a very kind of, mental and logical way of like kind of looking around and seeing, okay, well, this is what they're doing. This is what I like. And I was like, no, this needs to be way deeper. Like something deeper has to be going on here. And then when I found out about your Astrobrand sessions, I'm like, this is it. Like, this is it. Looking at my chart and finding the alchemy, the magic in there. And what was so amazing about our sessions together was that you affirmed so much of what I felt to be true about me and my work. And you really kind of helped me stand more steady in the work I wanted to do and the way I wanted to do it. And you also illuminated things that I was not aware of. But then as we dug into it, I was like, oh, that is the truth. But it was just exactly what I needed to help me as a business owner get that steady groundedness in how I do my work, why I do my work, and the way I do my work. I mean, it was such a wonderful gift. It was such a wonderful gift.
Oh my goodness. It was such a pleasure to do those sessions with you. And I remember you'd come in initially wanting to know more about your ideal customer. And so what did you grab from that once we talked about and you discovered your ideal customer with that Aries Taurus archetype?
I mean, everything Leslie said about my ideal customer, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly for the past like 5 years what I've been trying to figure out. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, just these certain things that you illuminated and how they are and the way that they kind of like to engage with me and be in community with me and how I can make things more clear and inviting for them, right? Because again, when you have a business, it's like, we all know you're supposed to quote unquote market things a certain way, and you're supposed to speak this way and do that, and pain points. And I hate the word pain points. I really do. I really hate that word. But like get into their mind, what keeps them up at night, and to be able to have that session with you and be like, well, this is kind of what's keeping them up at night. And like, this is how you can possibly position that for them. It really opened a door for me. And I will say, I know I came into being like, how the heck do I talk to these people? But I remember saying to you, I'm like, wow, everything else, like cause we go through the sessions with Leslie. If you haven't done it, you need to do it,
Oh,
where it's
thanks.
like your what, your why, your how, the
Mhm.
what, the why, and the how really actually have stuck with me more than the ideal customer part, because the more I can really embrace who I am. One of the things that came up in our work together with Leslie, I have this Leo nature, this Sag nature, which is like so welcoming and so like positive and peppy, but I also have this side of me that's kind of like divisive, like not, like this is really where I stand. This is where I
Yeah.
stand. And for the longest time, I was like, what? Well, how does this align with this like bubbly naturedness? Because, sometimes in my posts, I name things, even with the Alchemy Collective,
Yeah.
naming things like white supremacy and systems of oppression, and being and saying things in the wellness world that I'm like, this is not okay. And I remember when I first started doing that, I'm like, what are you doing? But it felt right. And
Yeah.
then looking at the chart, and the chart saying, yeah, this is who you are. You kind of say these things, and you say them in actually a very nice way.
Hmm.
But you also are very much like, this is who I am. This is what I do. And I think for me, that was like the biggest invitation to step into this other part of me and really embrace it. That was really the biggest gift you gave me, Leslie, that I really love, and I'm leaning into so much more.
Oh my gosh, I love hearing that, because it's really, I find that sometimes I'm telling people, it's like, yes, we have your ideal customers and you can talk to them, but don't become them. The idea of attracting your ideal customer is to become more you. And that's exactly what you said, just reflecting back. Like, I had permission to really see who I was. And then with your rising sign, your leadership style, with that beautiful Libra on the outside, but on the inside, we still had Pluto and Saturn conjunct right there with all that Scorpio. So the more polarizing, the more intense that you can become, with still being this beautiful, kind way of like bringing out all of this information, the more you become, and the more your ideal customers are like, I need that. I need the truth. I need empowerment. I need discipline. I need polarization. I need to like really bring light to all of those traumas, and not being afraid to talk about it in that way.
Absolutely. That was such a great gift you gave me. And it's interesting because, in the recent past, especially since we've worked together, I've done a couple posts that have kind of been a little polarizing. And, I've lost about, on Instagram, maybe like 100 community members, but then on the other side, I've gained like 120 new ones. And
Yes.
it makes me so happy, because
Yes.
I'm like, yes, you're here for this. Like, if you're not here for this, bye,
Yes.
and really leaning into that like Scorpio nature, like that's just like, okay, bye, see you later. I love it. I love it. I love
Just
it.
love the way you say bye. I don't know why that just like brings so much joy. It tickles my heart. And that's like, that Scorpio is like perfect. It's like that elimination. It's like, bye. Like, we don't
Yes.
need you anymore.
Yes. And it's just so freeing, because I think in the past, I really leaned into the Leo, and not knowing this, but that like Leo, Saggy, Libra ness of it all, which is like
Love
very, I think,
me.
just love me and like harmony and like all of that. And then, but that Scorpio and that Pluto and that Saturn were like, just bubbling. And now I feel like things are so much more balanced in how I do it. And really embracing all of that is amazing. It's been amazing.
Oh my gosh, I just absolutely love it. And so, like, just really quickly about going back to the alchemy design of the brand for your collective, knowing your chart, it's like, I feel like if anybody is going to be doing design work, to really do the positioning work and that foundational core energy work. Otherwise, you're just guessing, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. But when we did this work first, like really identifying your brand and positioning all of those energies, it made the design like just effortless. It just like comes forth.
Again, like really reflecting on it, it was such an easy process from me asking y'all to do this. And then the first thing you gave me, I was like, yes. And I've never had that. I've never had that before. And I'm sure a lot of people, like, it's just unheard of to be like, wow, this is it. And it really, truly, truly was. it truly was. It was just so flawless and wonderful and easy with you. It was just a really great experience.
Oh, thank you, Shirin. So I would love to ask you my star questions. Are you ready? This is kind of like the fun aspect.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Yes, yes.
I need to figure out how to gamify it and make it into like a game show. Maybe like set like a timer, like you have 30 seconds to answer this question.
I love it.
All right. So first star question. S is for spirituality. What spiritual practices do you use in your business?
Oh my goodness. So I have a morning routine, which is very flexible, but that really grounds me. And so that morning routine usually includes journaling, meditating, some form of just like very light movement. And then also recently singing. So I've incorporated a little bit, I've gotten a harmonium for myself and singing and grounding myself. But those spiritual practices really keep me aligned. And also, I actually have to say that for me, play is a big spiritual practice. My husband and I are very playful. I think that's like probably made me a Leo nature. But playing really keeps me, savor is a big word I use. And it's a big word. I think it's a mindfulness word for me, which is like, we're supposed to savor all of this. And when I can play with my husband in the middle of even a really busy day, whatever that is, like dancing or doing something silly, it just grounds me in that, like in my essence and who I am. So those things really keep me grounded and my spiritual practices.
I love that idea of savoring, just to kind of like bring you into the moment and just remind you to just have fun, enjoy that pleasure part. Oh, I love it. Okay, so star T is for thanks. What challenges did you overcome for which you are now grateful?
Oh my goodness. Oh, so many, but I think my biggest challenge was the biggest one was the one I kind of spoke about, which was really building a career as an opera singer that from the outside looked so successful and so wonderful, and realizing that it wasn't what I wanted to do with my life anymore, and having to do that deep work of untangling my identity from what I did, untangling my identity from something that I had invested so much of my life and money and time and energy into. It was a very difficult time in my life deciding what I should do, knowing that this career would ultimately not really make me happy, and ultimately was wonderful for the many years I practiced it, but I needed something different. And so I'm so grateful always to that version of myself. I always say, I hands down, like the GOAT, whomever, like MVP, VIP is like 6 years ago me who like burnt that shit down and decided to do something different. And I'm so grateful for her.
Oh my gosh. And then now time for some barbecued meat.
I love it. I love it.
That was kind of a disturbing thought, but
I love it. I love it.
Oh gosh. So beautiful. So yeah, the challenges in seeing success and then not really being satisfied by that. So, and then coming to what really is life about. Okay.
Yeah.
So A is for activism. What social impact do you want to make through your business?
Oh my goodness. For me, I've named it, but really it's to empower others to really make wellness their own and to heal in their own way. Because I think when we can really heal, then that's like the legacy of that is so huge. And whether or not we have families or not, that doesn't matter, but it's like the ripple effect on our communities is so huge. It's so amazing. So that for me is the impact I truly want to make in the world.
Just that wellness, that wholeness of everything. And I love the thought of, like, as you were saying about how it just ripples forth. I can even like, my son came into mind, that the more like healthy I can be and the more wholehearted I can be, the more that my son will be able to, and his children. And then if we believe in like healing our DNA and healing our past and legacy, then oh my gosh, the impact is huge.
Absolutely this. Absolutely.
Okay, last question in star. R is for radiate. How do you inspire others to shine brightly?
Oh my gosh. How do I, I think it's just by being my imperfect self. I think one thing that I do really well is I teach through story. And often those stories are very embarrassing or very vulnerable or very honest. And also showing where I am now, and that like this is all linked, right? Like that this journey had to happen, this difficult journey of embarrassments and pain and failure and sadness and all of the things that's now created this joy. And also this joy also has its moments of pain and difficulty and sadness. And I'm going to tell you all about it. But really for me, I mean, something I do often on my Instagram is post the beautiful things in my life and the wonderful things, and not because I'm gloating. It's because I want to show that like this is possible for all of us, because I always talk about what happened and where I came from and what the story was, because I want people to have, something I talk about often when I talk about manifestation is this concept of proof of concept, which is looking around you and seeing what is possible for other people who look like you, what is possible for other people who've experienced life like you. And this is one of the reasons why I think, white men do manifest such dumb things all the time, because white men have all these guys going to space and doing this, and it's just terrible, right?
All these role models.
All these terrible role models. And for me, it's like, I want to be someone's proof of concept. But look, Shirin went from feeling this way and thinking this way, and now she has this. And so that for me is just really important, is to be honest with people and vulnerable people, and also show what's possible.
Oh my goodness. You are such an inspiration for sure. Thank you so much, Shirin, for joining with me here and talking and sharing about the Alchemy Collective. If you don't already follow Shirin on Instagram, her Instagram is just like on fire. It's amazing. I love it. I'll have links in the show notes. But can you please remind us on how people can get in touch with you and how they can sign up for the Alchemy Collective?
Yeah. So my Instagram is Wholehearted Coaching. My website is wholehearted-coaching.com. I also have a podcast, a weekly podcast called Wholehearted Coaching, the podcast. And the Alchemy Collective is actually open now. And if you're listening live, it's open until October 1st. That's when doors close. And again, that's wholehearted-coaching.com/alchemy. And again, you can go see Leslie's beautiful, beautiful design work there. But yeah, those are the ways to get in touch with me.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful, wholehearted story. I just absolutely love chatting with you, Shirin.
As do I. And Leslie, everything you said about me is just reflected back to you. You were such an inspiration for me. You were such a joy. And this has just been a privilege of a conversation for me. So thank you, thank you, thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. All right. Bye, luminaries. Until next time. If you love this podcast, please consider doing me a favor and heading over to Apple iTunes and leaving me a rating and review. Your rating and review helps this humble podcast get seen and found by more listeners like you. Please share the love.